Welcome everyone. Welcome our speakers. I will introduce them in a moment. But welcome to this Film Club event, which is part of the Arts and Humanities Inspiring Minds series, which is entirely convened online this year. And to start with, just want to thank my gorgeous colleagues, Tim Beasley-Murray, Catherine Thompson, Jessica Thomas, Georgina Bolton, and Anthony Zbikakis for helping us to put this together behind the scenes. And also a big thank you to the Sadler's Wells team, who graciously gave us access to the Dancing at Dusk film, who co-produced the piece. And I think some of the Sadler's Wells team may be with us today, so welcome to them as well. So with me here are our two speakers, Germaine Acogny and Jorge Puerta-Armenta, whom I'll just briefly introduce before we move on to the discussion. And I'll just have to mention the fact that Germaine Acogny will be speaking in French, and I will translate her answers. So to your left, Jorge Puerta-Armenta is originally from Bogota in Colombia. He's a dancer, choreographer, educator, and also a researcher in improvisation, composition, and storytelling in dance. He originally trained at the Centre National de Danse Contemporaine in Angers, in France, which is actually, since its foundation in 1978, has been known as really one of the top centers of contemporary dance training in the world, and not just in France. Jorge has worked with the Tanztheater Wuppertal Pina Bausch, and sorry, my German is not great, from 1997 to 2014, when he left at that time to pursue his own choreographic work and to develop his teaching activities. Since then, he's been very active as a choreographer. He's developed his own repertoire of creations, some of them with the Tanztheater Wuppertal still, but many others elsewhere, including with the Institute of Arts in his home city of Bogota. Now, as part of his work, he's also been very busy restaging The Rite of Spring, the original choreography by Pina Bausch, which he has done not only with the École des Sables, as we'll see today, but also with the English National Ballet. And at the same time, Jorge is still very much active as a dancer, including with the Tanztheater Wuppertal. So with us also Germaine Acogny. Welcome to Germaine. So I have to say, I'm very impressed. Germaine just finished a class almost 5 minutes ago, and she's just joining us from finishing to teach. So we're very grateful that she's made the time for this. And Germaine is very difficult to introduce without appearing to exaggerate, but it's safe to say, I think, that she's one of the absolute pillars of professional dance in Africa. And in fact, I've never met, I do not believe there is a single contemporary dancer on the continent who has not either been trained by her or at least been influenced by her work at some point. Every professional dancer, at least contemporary dancer on the continent, is related to Germaine, and I'm not exaggerating. The Choreographic Center she established in 1998, and which she leads in Toubab Dialaw on the coast south of Dakar, is where the film was made, and this is a genuinely Pan-African space. There are dancers from all over the continent and actually from all over the world coming to this center. But Germaine is also widely known for developing her own style, her own technique of African dance, which she has explained in a book, and which she has most importantly transmitted to several generations of dancers all over the continent and beyond, also in Europe, North America, and Latin America, and the Caribbean. Germaine is a choreographer in her own right, but she's also a dancer, and that's very important. She's always been a dancer. As she told one of her Belgian collaborators a few years ago, she said to them, "You don't really know me because you haven't seen me dance." And so she challenged them to go and see her dance on stage. And that is probably where they discovered the real Germaine, or perhaps the complete Germaine. Not only as the mother of African dance, as many of her students and collaborators call her, but also the dancer. Germaine has developed spaces for choreographic innovation in Africa for many years now. For example, from 1977 to 1982, she was the artistic director of Moudra Afrique, which was a dance school choreographic center created by French choreographer Maurice Béjart and by then President Léopold Sédar Senghor, who was the first president of Senegal and a leading figure in the literary Negritude movement. She also helped to start the African Contemporary Dance Biennale in the mid-1990s, which is still going today. Now, it's also important to mention that as a dancer, Germaine has performed a solo version of The Chosen One from The Rite of Spring with a choreography by French choreographer Olivier Dubois. And perhaps she can mention this. This is one of the many ways in which Germaine has had a relation to The Rite of Spring for many years now. But I'll let her explain perhaps something about that experience and how it connects with this version of The Rite of Spring. So to get us started, I will ask Germaine a question in English, which I'll then repeat in French. So I think, Germaine, you have had a relationship to The Rite of Spring for a very long time. And there is indeed something fascinating about this piece, which was originally created for the Ballet Russe in Paris in 1913, in a very different choreographic version with music by Igor Stravinsky. And that piece has since then fascinated many choreographers elsewhere who've restaged, recreated their own versions of it. So I'm going to ask you if you could say something about your relationship to that particular piece and also how this project came about. Donc Germaine, je disais que j'expliquais que vous aviez eu une relation avec le Sacre du Printemps depuis très longtemps, de différentes façons. Et donc je voulais vous demander si vous pourriez nous parler un petit peu de ça. Ça va être intéressant pour les participants ici de comprendre comment est-ce qu'à l'origine, une pièce qui avait été créée pour les Ballets Russes en 1913 a continué de fasciner des chorégraphes et des danseurs ailleurs depuis si longtemps. Et donc, si vous pouvez nous parler un peu de cette relation avec le sacre et aussi nous expliquer comment est-ce que ce projet a été mis sur pied.
Bon, j'ai rencontré d'abord le sacre la première fois avec Maurice Béjart. Quand j'ai vu le sacre de Maurice Béjart, je me suis sentie très proche parce que il a un quart de sang noir, mais de sang sénégalais. Et quand j'ai vu ce ballet, j'ai dit que c'était quelque chose qui était proche de nous parce que c'était des rites païens. Et aussi, j'avais après, quand j'ai rencontré, quand il y a eu Moudra Afrique, Maurice Béjart voulait faire le sacre avec les danseurs de Moudra Afrique. Et je lui avais proposé une jeune danseuse. Et il m'a dit non, je voudrais que ce soit toi qui sois l'élu. Je dis, mais moi, à 35 ans, je ne peux pas être l'élu. Et puis, il n'y a pas eu de sacre parce que Moudra Afrique a fermé ses portes. Et 35 ans après, quand j'ai eu 70 ans, Olivier Dubois m'a demandé d'être son élu. Et là, c'était vraiment un pari pour lui et pour moi. Et c'est ce sacre que j'ai dansé en solo parce que je pense que le sacre est tellement universel et que chaque siècle voit apparaître son sacre. Et même le sacre est contemporain parce que on fait des rituels. Par exemple, moi, je pense que pour le Covid, pour Corona, on devrait faire un rituel. Et je pense que le sacre, c'est un rituel qui peut effacer le Corona, par exemple. Parce qu'on a, dans le contemporain, il faut continuer à faire des rituels. Et je trouve que c'est très bienvenu que j'ai rencontré à Bruxelles, quand je dansais mon élu noir, Salomon Bausch est venu me voir danser avec Anne-Thérèse de Kersmacher. Et à la fin du spectacle, il a dit qu'il voulait que les danseurs africains apprennent le sacre de sa mère. Mais je dis, c'est tout à fait bienvenu, parce que quand j'ai vu le sacre de Pina Bausch, je peux vous dire que je sentais que c'était totalement africain, la musique, les tremblements, les trémulations, tous les mouvements de buste sont très proches de ce que nous faisons, et aussi le rituel. Donc, je trouvais tout à fait normal et heureux que ce sacre soit transmis aux Africains.
Merci. So I'm going to translate. So to understand how this has, the rite of spring has come about here, we have to go back to the 70s, where Germaine had seen Maurice Béjart's version of the Rite of Spring being performed in Paris. And already then she was fascinated because, as she said, what was a ritual? She was fascinated with this idea of a ritual which celebrated, not only celebrated spring, but also showed the power of ritual and the power of some of the old rituals which we tend to have forgotten today. She was also fascinated with the movement style, with the fact that it was earthy, very much into the ground. And she wondered that perhaps Maurice Béjart had been touched by the fact that some of his ancestry had roots in Senegal. Maurice Béjart's grandfather was Senegalese, and there was a relationship there. So already then she was fascinated by some elements in the Rite of Spring. And then when she created Moudra Afrique, when Maurice Béjart, he wanted her to perform The Chosen One. And at the time she was in her mid-30s, she thought she was too old to perform The Chosen One. So that didn't happen, and then Moudra Afrique was closed. But much later, in fact, only a few years ago, Olivier Dubois, a French choreographer, went back to Germaine with the idea of creating a solo for her on The Chosen One, the woman chosen to be sacrificed. And all these years later, Germaine accepted, thought now was a good time, and she performed in Belgium, among other places, and that's where Solomon Bausch from the Pina Bausch Foundation saw the solo and decided that Germaine's center would be the ideal place to restage Pina Bausch's Rite of Spring, but in an African context and African dancers. And Germaine thinks that there is something very African in the Rite of Spring, in the expression through the torso, in the theme, the importance of ritual. And she also sees the rite as something universal, timeless, and thinks that in fact there is a message here, and that we should perhaps, in times of crises as the one in which we are now, we should return to the power of ritual. Perhaps not a ritual that would sacrifice women, but still the power of ritual. So I'm going to ask Jorge now. Jorge, for those participants who do not know anything about the Rite of Spring, who do not know the story behind, so to speak, could you, since you've lived with it also for so many years, could you say something about what the rite might evoke to people? Why is it that it continues to fascinate choreographers? We may not know exactly why Pina Bausch chose it, but what is it about it that is so meaningful? And then afterwards, if you could say something about how you proceeded to select dancers.
Okay, hi. So I will try to answer you. I think if I can use this, it's very short. Actually, the plot of the piece is to sacrifice a woman. Officially, it's a woman, young woman who is a virgin, to gods to have a fantastic spring. So that's the plot of the piece. then of course choreographers, they still are touching that piece and reinventing things or adjusting things to this dramaturgy. In my eyes, I think it's a mixture of what Germaine was saying, why choreographers are still so attracted to this piece, why is something that many artists, they want to try, or they're attracted to this. I think it's a mixture of what Germaine said, that it's a ritual. And I think rituals are things still that we are maybe not so often practicing, but attracted, and somehow when we are in front of one of them or part of one of them, it's a very intense experience. So I believe that this is one of the things. I think the other thing that is really, really attracting artists is this music. It was a command for a ballet, and he came up with this incredible music, who I believe is attracting a lot of people. It's a very impressive composition, has incredible many dynamics, is quite alive. It's something like I don't know how to explain it. It's something that is kind of beating by himself when you listen. So I think it's one of the reasons why people, they are still trying or attracted to that. I think these two things could be maybe the reason. And the second question was exactly what? Can you remember me?
So how did you select dancers to become part of this? Because of course they were not all already at the École des Sables in Babiala. So who did you select and how?
Okay, so it was I think, if I don't make any mistake, I think it was like three phase, how you say that, periods of selecting.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So the first one was through video. So first of all, we just make a call to all Africa continent to send us a video not longer than 1 minute, more or less, from whatever they want to show us. So they could do something new, they could just send something that they did already, or they're inside of a piece. And we didn't ask also any especially formation or technique behind. So we just asked them, anyone who is a dancer, no matter from which type of dance wants to, or believe that wants to do this, he can just send us a video. So from this, we got like, I remember more or less like 200 videos. And then looking at these videos, we realized we were a team of 4 people who looked at the videos. We realized that actually through video, it was very, let's say, rude to choose or to have really good arguments to choose people. So I would say like, we just really keep like 170, something like this around. And the other 30, I would say like, it was just because we saw that technically they will not make it, or they were still just in the beginning of the thing. So maybe at the end, or something that it was clear that they will not make it, in so short time to learn the piece. So, and then the second step was to meet them. So we went to 3 countries in Africa. We went to 3 capitals. So we went to Abidjan, and Ouagadougou, and Turbabla-Dalaogue, that is really near from Dakar, like one hour far away by car. And in each city, we invite part of these dancers to join us there for 3 days of a workshop and audition. So in each city, we pre-select people, dancers, after 3 days of work. And in each city, we were in was organized by some cultural centers who get attached to the project through connections between Salles Wells, Col de Sable with Dakar, and so on. And so we spent 3 days in each city doing an audition. I will say like audition because you have to make choices, but it's more like a workshop where you are teaching the movements, you are giving some class and so on. So from that second step, we choose from each city. I will say at the end we had like almost 80 persons. So, and then we spent almost 3 days more, which start 80 persons. And then we restart again the work. We teach them phrases from the choreography. We did few exercises extra to kind of relax them, to put them in a context, or no. And from that 2 extra days, we came up with 38 dances. So this was
From how many different countries?
So, I mean, from the auditions, I believe there were far more that from what they stay in the group. In the group are 14 nationalities, 14 countries from Africa. But I believe in the audition there were far more. Yes, I'm sure. I remember people from Egypt. We don't have anybody from Egypt right now in the group. From Ethiopia, I remember somebody also, but he didn't make it to stay in the group. So for the audition, I don't know. It's interesting. I would like to check and to realize how many people came off, how many countries of people make the effort to come back, to come to these 3 cities. But in the group that they are doing the work, the project, there are 14 nationalities.
That's really impressive. And I'm going to ask Germaine, so we know that a number of these dancers did not have a background in classical ballet. They had very diverse background. How does one work to transmit? I mean, I know that you were there and the transmission was probably mainly done by Jorge and his colleague Joan, but you also had something to do with this. How does one transmit choreography and an existing piece from a repertoire which exists within a completely different movement style to dancers who have a different background, a very different technical set of skills? Donc Germaine, je demande en fait comment ça se passe dans ce contexte quand on remonte une pièce qui a été créée dans un style de mouvement complètement différent, avec des danseurs qui ont une autre formation, qui ont d'autres techniques. Concrètement, qu'est-ce qui se passe? Comment ça marche?
Bon, mais ça, c'est les transmetteurs qui peuvent en parler plus. Mais moi, en dehors, j'ai quand même remarqué, et je suis très contente de savoir que la plupart des danseurs qui étaient là, ils ont une base traditionnelle de leur pays, des danses patrimoniales, parce que c'est de là qu'ils partent pour aller vers le contemporain. Il y avait des danseurs urbains aussi. Donc, ce dont j'ai été vraiment sûre, c'est que nos bases de danse traditionnelle sont égales pour la formation, égale au classique, égale au contemporain, parce que ce sont des danseurs. Mais je pense que quand on est un bon danseur, on peut s'adapter à tous les styles. Mais ce que j'ai remarqué de l'extérieur, c'est qu'il y avait un grand respect entre les transmetteurs et les danseurs. Et ceux qui transmettaient étaient très à l'écoute, mais ceux qui prenaient voulaient vraiment apprendre et aller au-delà de ce qu'ils savaient. Parce que se cultiver, un corps qui est cultivé, comme je dis, je peux manger du chinois, je peux manger de l'allemand, je peux manger de l'indien, mais j'assimile tout ça pour grandir, pour que je sois moi-même. Et c'est ce qui est arrivé. Et j'étais, moi, impressionnée aussi comment ils se sont appropriés les mouvements et comment ils se sont appropriés la musique. Moi, j'ai eu beaucoup plus de mal avec la musique que ces jeunes qui ont vraiment s'est approprié de la musique. Donc, une chose, c'est ce que les transmetteurs et ceux qui reçoivent ont reçu, mais moi, de l'extérieur, je pouvais voir qu'il n'y avait aucune différence pour apprendre. Bon, la façon d'en prendre, c'est différent, mais le résultat pour moi est fantastique parce qu'ils ont fait la même chose que ceux de Ballet de Londres, que ceux de Ballet de Paris. Seulement, il y a une différence de corps, une différence d'énergie. Ils n'ont pas les pointes de pied comme ça, mais l'énergie, les sentiments, ce n'est pas le coup de pied, c'est dans le corps. Et ils ont su transmettre avec leur corps tous les sentiments et les mouvements dont on avait besoin pour cette chorégraphie.
So Germaine acknowledges that, of course, when you restage a piece like this in a completely different context, it does become something else. The dancers express themselves differently. Many of them indeed did not have a background in classical ballet, but what she said is that most of them had very strong training in traditional dances from their own various African countries. Some of them were also doing hip hop urban dances, and that those backgrounds were actually strong enough for them to pick up this movement style very quickly. And she was impressed, in fact, with the speed at which many of the dancers picked this up. She also said that there was a reciprocal exchange, that the transmitters, Jorge and his colleague, seemed to be learning just as much as they were transmitting. So there was a two-way street in a sense. Yeah, she was even impressed with the way in which the dancers appropriated the music, which she found very challenging. And we should perhaps say that in the Rite of Spring, I mean, one of the reasons why the Rite of Spring is so famous around the world is that the music by Stravinsky was a radical shift at the time. It was received as a revolution in classical music. When the piece was first performed in 1913, many audiences did not understand the music. Some walked out. It was reviewed as being scandalous in many places. And the French orchestra, which rehearsed the composition by Stravinsky at the time, during the early rehearsals, apparently kept stopping and telling the conductor that there were too many mistakes in the piece, because this was so different from anything that performed before. So this piece is known to have music composition that is challenging. But Germaine is saying that although this felt very new and unfamiliar to the dancers, she was really impressed with the speed at which they appropriated this music and lived themselves into it. So I should probably ask Jorge if he wants to add anything about this mode of transmission. But also you mentioned that you met dancers, and I know that sometimes in contemporary dance, the personality of dancers is as important as their training. Seen from the outside, it looks as if it's all about movement, but in fact, in the world of contemporary dance, there is a lot more going on. So was that also the case here? Were you looking for personalities in a way?
Mm-hmm. Yes, of course, completely. No? The process of choosing people for the piece, but like you say, in modern dance now, in contemporary dance, has become very important matter. No, it's not only about how you move, but who you are, why you move. No, Pina herself was really clear with these phrases. No, in her books, in her interviews, it's a phrase that she liked to say many times, that I'm interested in why people are moving, no, and not just moving. So, and the same was for this audition. So when we were working, of course, they were, let's say that we could put 3 people that they could do the same result after you show a phrase, and then you see, yeah, technically, and the phrase and the movement is there in the 3 of them. But for sure, when we have to look around and to think about the piece, and for some parts of the piece, which type of people has to be there, which kind of character has to be there, who can give us freedom, who can give us a little bit more wildness, who can give us a little bit more like intimacy or things like this. So you start to look more than just how they move. No? So you start to look about how they do, how they react to what you are asking them. What we can see from the meeting of these 2 or 3 days, how they react to what we say, how far they understand what you're saying. Looks like they can cohabitating with these movements. They can do that. It's a character that can really let this movement be in. No? So it's a mixture of yes, like how the people are. And so we are looking all the time there, also not that kind of like trying to take away the body somehow, no, and try to understand who is this person. It will be beautiful to see this person on stage, not this mover or this dancer. It will be also very nice to see this person. It's giving more than just the movements. No? So this is a huge part, and it's a very difficult part because it's very subjective. No, but because the choreography is there, and we know for years and years of doing it, what it's about, how the people have to be. Or also, we have to also say that actually our eyes to choose people is through what Pina was looking also. No, so for us is also something that we learn it, which kind of dance that you see that is also moving beyond just the body, but also sharing emotions and let it happen, the movements, and not just control the movements. So I will say that this was also something that we all do, all dances, all the team, that we were more than only 2. At one point, I think all over, we were like maybe 8 people came to teach. Of course, Johan and Dicot and me, we were all the time there. But all the dancers and ex-dancers, they came to help us. No? It's very important that we are more than only 2 persons to teach. There's so many colors and so many ways to dance on stage, this piece, that is very interesting for the dancers, for the learners, to see that actually we are different. We have information that is very similar, but also we have some little shadows of personal ways to do that. All of them, they were allowed to be on stage. So yeah, I would say that for that. And then of course, if we start to talk about what that means to teach to these dances, then we go into something more precise. But if you want, we can go there. But I would like to hear a question, that point that no.
Okay, we'll leave this for now and see if more questions emerge from participants on that. I would like to ask you both, what happened when the lockdown started? So you were about to go on tour with this piece, and then the pandemic started. And in fact, I was in Senegal when the first cases were detected there in early March. Can you tell us exactly what happened, how this affected the dancers, what happened in the following weeks and months? Donc Germaine, je vais demander si tous les deux, vous pourriez nous dire, et peut-être vous d'abord, si vous pourriez nous parler de ce qui s'est passé quand la pandémie a commencé. Vous étiez, la pièce était terminée, vous étiez juste sur le point de partir, et tout d'un coup, Covid-19 est arrivé, le confinement, tout a été annulé. Qu'est-ce qui s'est passé à Tuba Bialao? Quelles ont été les conséquences pour les danseurs? Est-ce que vous pouvez un peu nous parler de ce qui s'est passé à ce moment-là et les conséquences par la suite?
Bon. Moi, j'étais en tournée et quand je suis revenue, j'ai eu la chance de voir le premier filage, la première fois que la pièce était en entier dans la salle Henriette. Ah, mais j'étais vraiment, vraiment émue et j'en ai pleuré parce que le résultat était fantastique et qu'il restait quand même 10 jours de travail. Et donc, le samedi, nous, on espérait qu'on allait danser à Sorano, au théâtre, au Grand Théâtre de Dakar, et dans une autre salle populaire. Et on nous dit que Covid, Corona, tout est fermé, plus rien ne peut se passer dans les théâtres. Ça a été... Mais on a fait la fête, il y avait une fête, un anniversaire, et ce jour-là arrivait Salomon Bach avec les costumes. Donc, tout de suite, ça a travaillé dans la tête des profs, des transmetteurs et tout. Et il fallait, on avait la chance aussi qu'il y avait des gens qui filmaient pour un reportage. Et là, on a décidé de filmer les danseurs. Et puis, et vous savez, chez nous, en Afrique, on dit quand quelque chose arrive, c'est peut-être un mal, mais peut-être pour un bien. Et on espère que la prochaine fois, ce sera mieux. Et donc, on a fait le rituel du feu. Après là, on a allumé le feu après le repas. On s'est mis en cercle et on a prié les esprits, on a prié pour la famille, pour tout le monde, pour que ça aille mieux. Donc, ça a remonté le moral des danseurs. Et puis aussi, le lendemain, il y avait les techniciens, tout le monde était venu pour mettre en place le spectacle. Et on a fait un grand repas ensemble, un rituel de repas ensemble, bien qu'il y avait déjà pas encore les gestes barrières. On a mangé à la sénégalaise, dans les grands bols, en fait. On a prié, on a mangé pour dire que ce rituel ensemble, que plus tard, les choses iront mieux. Donc, c'est de ce côté-là que nous, on a fait ce rituel. Maintenant, je laisse le transmetteur parler de la suite et comment on a pu faire la danse au crépuscule. Je le laisse parler. Moi, je parle du côté rituel, du côté de prière pour l'avenir et que tout se passera pour le mieux. Maintenant, je le laisse, c'est lui le grand maître. Ils étaient plusieurs à transmettre, à lui de parler.
So Germaine was explaining that there were still 10 days of work left when the pandemic came to Senegal. They were due to perform in the National Theatre in Dakar, the Daniel Sorano National Theatre, and also in a smaller space in one of the neighborhoods, and that was cancelled. So the piece was never shown in Senegal. But her first inclination was to organize a ritual around a fire to bring the whole team together, dancers, transmitters, everybody together, to pray for the health and well-being of all families and everyone else. And she thinks that ritual actually did dancers a lot of good. So that was her first inclination, dealing with things through ritual, through the sharing of food. And then Jorge will say perhaps something about what happened with the film and what happened with the dancers. So far as I remember, some of them were actually stuck there subsequently because their passports were not even in the country. There was a lot going on.
Yes. So for to complete the answer of Germaine, what happened actually, we did work until we work without knowing that we're going to stop. I must say, I will say that maybe yeah, of course, we were getting the information of Corona. Of course, we were knowing that things they were turning bad, but we never really thought that we're gonna stop. So just, I would say, like 2 or 3 days before we stop, I got really the information that maybe we're gonna have to stop. And until the day they told us, so we were just keeping rehearsing, and we never make also a thematic if we're gonna have to stop. You know, we didn't have time to talk about that at all, and we didn't even thought that it was something we have to speak about it. But then came the decision, and we were just at the end of the first day of first run through. We did 2 run throughs. It was the last rehearsal. It was a Saturday, and we were supposed to eat together and to go to a birthday party from one of the persons of the project. And then we had to tell them in the dinner. So because I was the only one speaking French and English and could translate everything, so they chose me to tell them. So it was difficult to say that to them. We were in the room of where the school is giving the dinner and the restaurant of the school, and yeah, it was very difficult because it was like at the same time I say that we have to stop. It was nothing to say what's going to happen after. We didn't know anything about the future. It was just that we cannot continue. Point. No. But right away, before in the afternoon, we plan already this film on the sand. So during that moment of telling them that we're going to stop, right away we told them that actually we would like to work in Sunday, that we would like to do 2 run-throughs again, one in the morning and one in the afternoon, one in the studio and one in the sand and in the beach. We say to them that it was maybe good to have a video version of the work. Whatever could happen after with the project, it was also very interesting to have just a version, yes, a video version before we all have to go. No? So, and this was an idea from Salomon. Actually, he landed in the morning and he just was kind of trying to brainstorming what to do with all this. It will disappear like this, just like that. And then he came to this idea, and then everybody, technicians, they were there just also 2 or 3 days before, already constructing the wood floor for us to rehearse in the studios, bringing the earth, and we were waiting the earth. So the whole team was there ready to start to put into a show the whole project. And then everybody just say, come, we do it. So the team of technicians, they went to the beach, they found the place where to do it, they prepare for us, they treat the sandals of us in that moment, they put the videos, the cameras, someone just ran live. I remember it was an assistant, a fantastic person who just drove to the little town to find a sound system that could work without power, and then it was necessary a power supply. So the whole thing was just an improvisation day where everybody just it was a very happy group working. So it was very nice to see that actually that effort, it was just a pleasure for everybody to do. I would say for the ones who was very hard, it was for the dancers, because I will say that they just got the information that it will finished, but at the same time, we're asking them to dance and to be full in dancing in a project that they know that the day after will be nothing.
Yes.
So I would say that for them was the hard part, and because also because we asked them twice, no, one in the morning and one in the afternoon, because the idea was to film during the sun, how you say that, sun, the end of the day, no. So yes, this was what happened, and yeah, we had to stop from 100%. A very intensive 10 days is always, the last 10 days is very intense, is where all the dancers realize all what they did, all what they cannot do still. And we are hoping that in 10 days they will achieve still a lot. The all tension, the all stress, the all efforts start to kind of getting in results, and everybody's excited, no? So yes, I will say, like, I don't know the other ones. For me, it was like we stopped, and I didn't really realize that we stopped. I must say it. That's what my feeling. I mean, we stopped, but I didn't understood what that means. It was like, no.
No, of course.
So, yeah.
Yeah. That's the new reality for many performing artists and many artists around the world, unfortunately. But that was really tragic at that particular time. So I'm going to open to questions now. We would like questions from the audience. There is already one in the chat. So please, if you have questions, to write them in the chat or Q&A. So one participant is saying the rites of spring were written to depict certain Slavonic pagan rites. Can you identify any specific traditional Senegalese dances or rituals, and how do these differ in terms of stages that people have to negotiate to become fully humans, full persons? And what do they tell us about the social changes that have occurred in Senegal over the past few decades? And can these dances be accessed anywhere on YouTube? On the last one, yes, some dances are accessible on YouTube, but it depends on which. Obviously, the most secret rituals are not on YouTube, but yes, many dances are on YouTube. I should perhaps ask Germaine. Donc, Germaine, cette personne demande... fait référence au fait que le sacre du printemps a été créé avec des rites slaves à l'esprit à l'époque, notamment russes, et cette personne demande si on peut faire une connexion avec des rituels ou des danses traditionnelles au Sénégal qui puissent aussi être décrites comme des rites de passage. Est-ce qu'il y a un lien avec des danses traditionnelles ou des rituels sénégalais? Et qu'est-ce que ces danses disent du changement social dans les dernières années? Donc, une grosse question, mais si vous avez quelque chose à...
Bon, de toute façon, dans les villages, dans le temps, et même pour faire venir la pluie, par exemple, il y a des rituels qu'on fait. Hein, on offre du lait caillé, de l'huile de palme, on offre des choses de la nature. Il y a aussi, bon, dans le temps, même chez les Grecs, il y a eu des sacrifices humains pour que le village soit en paix, qu'il y a, ou quand on demande quelque chose. Par exemple, chez les Baoulés, quand la reine Pokou, quand ils ont voulu quitter le Ghana pour aller dans un autre pays, les esprits du fleuve ont demandé un sacrifice. Et la reine a dû sacrifier son fils pour passer. Vous voyez, il y a tous ces rituels dans le passé pour qu'un peuple soit réuni, d'aller dans un autre village. Il y a plein de rituels comme ça. Donc, ces rituels de sacrifice humain n'existent plus, mais il y a des rituels de sacrifice de poulet, de mouton, de bœuf pour avoir quelque chose. Donc, ces rituels-là existent encore, vous voyez. Donc, ce n'est pas quelque chose qui est étranger aux Africains, ce rituel de sacrifice. Donc, on se retrouve sur le même terrain. Et aussi, il y a des danses pour mettre le deup, par exemple, au Sénégal, quand quelqu'un est malade ou quelqu'un est hors de la société, par des rythmes, par des danses, toute la société l'entoure pour le refaire mettre dans la communauté. Donc, les rites, les chants et tout ça, ce n'est pas quelque chose qui est étranger à nous et qui existe encore.
Tout à fait.
Qui existe encore.
Donc,
voilà.
So Germaine is saying that indeed, one of the reasons why this piece spoke to her is because this idea of sacrifice, that a community organizes rituals and has through which something or someone has to be sacrificed for the well-being of the group, that is probably quite universal. So she says in ancient Greece, there were human sacrifices. She gave the example of Queen Poku among the Baoulé in today's Côte d'Ivoire, who led her people away to safety into neighboring lands, and to ensure the safety of the group, she was asked to sacrifice someone from the community. So that's from the regional West African history and mythology. And she says, of course, today there are no rituals where actual human beings are sacrificed, but there are still rituals in Senegal and throughout the region where animals are being sacrificed, for example, chickens or sheep. And beyond that, the very idea that something has to be sacrificed for the community to sustain itself is very common in Africa and very common elsewhere. So this is one of these timeless themes in The Rite of Spring that continue to speak to her and to many other people in the region. So there was, I think, another question here in the chat, which I'm trying to see. Quite small in the Q&A. So here, this participant is saying that actually the fact that this piece was performed only once brings this sense of ritual absolutely alive. A real ritual that cannot be repeated until next year. And this is compounded by the fact that it happens at dusk and that afterwards it will be night. So in some way, the way in which the film was made, this unique performance, he's saying that was the real ritual. So I guess it's a
interesting,
more than a question, but it's an interesting perspective on this.
Completely.
I'm not seeing any other question come through, so please do write if you have more. But while people think about a final possible question, I want to ask you one which I think many participants will have in mind. There is a perception that the Rite of Spring is a European piece, although you've already explained very eloquently that it's not, it's a universal piece in many ways. But what would you say to those who ask, why restage a European piece in an African context? What would you say to them? Donc Germaine, je demande pour les gens qui auraient cette question à l'esprit, même si vous avez déjà bien expliqué que le Sacre du Printemps n'est pas une création exclusivement européenne, qu'elle parle de thèmes universels, qu'est-ce que vous diriez à ceux qui demandent pourquoi recréer une pièce du répertoire européen en Afrique?
Et pourquoi pas? Pourquoi pas? On est comme tout le monde. Hein? Il y a quelqu'un qui me disait que c'est un honneur que le sacre soit en Afrique. Mais on pourrait dire que c'est un honneur aussi pour la Fondation Pied de la Barge que les Africains dansent la pièce. Toujours dans le sens contraire. Je ne comprends pas. Moi, je trouve... et pourquoi pas? Si c'est à Londres, Si c'est transmis au Japon, si c'est transmis, et pourquoi pas en Afrique? Et est-ce qu'on est différent parce qu'on est noir? Pourquoi? Je leur pose la question et qu'ils me répondent. Mais c'est ça qui m'étonne. Pourquoi pas? Pourquoi pas?
So Germaine would say, well,
Qu'ils me répondent.
Germaine would say, why not? Why is this question always asked when African dancers are involved? Why is this question never asked when the piece is restaged in London or elsewhere, for example? So she doesn't see it as a problem because, of course, she doesn't think that those kinds of distinctions are worth making. And on the contrary, she's saying that it's an honor for the Pina Bausch Foundation to have a restaging done in Africa, that to have this version of the Rite of Spring recreated and transformed through the work of African dancers is actually something that is bringing new life into the piece, and that's bringing a new, that is refreshing the piece in new ways. So for her, we should actually reverse the question altogether. I think there are some comments here which point in a similar direction. One of the participants is actually saying that this is one of the most beautiful interpretations of the Rite of Spring that he has seen, and clearly he's seen earlier versions of the piece. So he's saying congratulations to all on such an achievement. And he says, during the premiere in 1913, Stravinsky got so annoyed by the audience's rude shouts that he went behind the curtain to help the dancers keep time. He would have been so delighted to see the spectacular accomplishment of your performance. One of the challenges of the piece for the audience was the juxtaposition of the wild music with the high structures of high-class European society at the time. How did the wilderness of the piece sit in the context of modern Senegal? We could see the interested spectators watching. Yes, there were some spectators on the beach, but the piece was not performed in a bigger way as planned, unfortunately, because of COVID. Then another participant is saying, thank you both so much for this beautiful intervention. My question is, amidst the tragedy of the loss of life, amidst the tragedy of the loss of live performance, could an element of the sacrifice be the live performance? In this COVID age, what has the digital stage offered audiences who are hungry for art? And now having to access it from their homes. I watched the piece before this webinar and was incredibly moved. Thank you for filming it. Signed from a dancer for life. And that is a colleague of mine who indeed, aside of being an academic, is also a dancer for life. So I guess those are comments rather than questions, and perhaps this idea of the live performance as the ultimate sacrifice is a good note on which to end. I personally hope that this performance will be seen live, that there will be a tour. I don't want to think about the death of live performance, but of course, given the dire situation in which live performing arts are finding themselves, artists here in Senegal, elsewhere, being pretty much left to their own devices, that is a question we're asking ourselves. What is the future of performances like this? What is the future of those kinds of collaborations in a post-COVID world? We probably can't answer this, but I think this is a very good note on which to end. For my part, I would like to really very warmly thank Germaine Acogny and Jorge Puerta Amrenta for joining us. They're both extremely distinguished artists in their own rights, and they're really doing us a favor being with us at UCL today. So thank you so much for the honor. Thank you for the participants. Please do take the time to watch the film if you haven't yet done so. It will be available until Friday evening. And keep watching dance, keep engaging with it. And thank you. Merci, Germaine. Merci, Jorge.